Good morning. I'm Ethan Rogers, and this is my introductory video for Epic Charter Schools. So, like I said, my name is Ethan. I was born in Kenya, which is a small country in East Africa. I lived there till I was about 8, and then I moved to America. My parents were missionaries, and as a product of being born in Africa, I love football, which you probably know as soccer. I played in college, I played in high school, I still play some with my friends. Now I mostly coach. I'm getting a little bit too old to be running around that much. My favorite team is Manchester United, which I actually have here on my tie, our little emblem. It's also kind of my good luck tie, so. One of the things we were asked to discuss in this video is our executive summaries, and I would like to start with personalized learning. And the reason I want to start with that is because I feel like it is the philosophy or the idea which a school or an administration can take, and that some of these other things come out of. And so personalized learning is almost what it sounds like. It's this concept, it's this approach to teaching that we should narrow our instruction down to the smallest possible or lowest common denominator, which would be the student. And so each student receives his or her own plan for their education. So what this does not mean is that we teach different things to different kids, but what it does mean is that we take our learning objectives, like our content, and we figure out the best way to impart that learning content to each student. And so the first thing that we besides the content, but we know what the content is, we would know what the learning objectives are. We then need to understand where each student is. We can gather this data two different ways. We can either use formalized testing, assessments to figure out exactly where our students are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, or we can be a little bit less formalized. We can, as a teacher, observe, and I say, oh, I know what this student's strength is, or this student is really good at reading, or this student really seems to understand things that they can manipulate with their hands. And so then using that information to build very specific plans for each student to learn. So this can obviously look 100 different ways, because you're going to have a lot of different students who have very, very different strengths and weaknesses, but also have very, very different ways of gathering new information or learning new knowledge. And so I think that's sort of the umbrella. And so being data driven is a big part of that. We need to know where the students are. We need to know what they know. We need to know what they don't know. We need to learn strengths, weaknesses, abilities, and then skills that need to be worked on. And then this also leads us to differentiated learning. So you may have a student who, when I was teaching in Oklahoma City Public Schools, I had a student who would routinely finish everything that he could get his hands on in 5 minutes. And then he would sit there and he would be like, what am I supposed to do now, Mr. Rogers? What should I do now? And one of the things I learned very quickly with him was that if I gave him a project, he would fly. He could just figure anything out. And so one time I asked him to build a catapult out of markers. And of course, he didn't have he didn't know English very well. And he was like, a catapult, what is that? And so I told him to go to the library. I just wrote it on a piece of paper. I sent him to the library. He came back with 3 books. He watched some videos. And then by the end of that week, he had not only built the catapult out of markers and some rubber bands and some tape, but he had actually taught several other students in the room how to make them. And so we were making predictions on how far we could launch these marshmallows. And so then we incorporated math, and this all came from this idea that I know that this student is not going to want to sit and read a book. And I think that's that's a great example of what differentiated learning can look like. We want to figure out where the student is strongest and then highlight that strength, give them opportunities to showcase that ability that they have naturally, And so then they learn and they can grow, and even in his case, become a leader in that instance and teach other students. And so we were able to bring in all of these different elements simply from doing that for one child. And so I think that moment really highlighted to me how important differentiating our instruction can be. We want our students to receive a wide variety of tasks and projects and goals, which then push them further in their educational journey. Now, interestingly, knowing that he liked to work with his hands was something that I learned just from watching him and talking to him. And then, sort of not conversely, but on the other hand, I wouldn't have known how weak his English language skills were without data. And so I think using the data is critical. And I think also the teacher's own observations and knowledge are also critical to this entire approach. So in summation, I think personalized learning is the way of the future. I think making education plans as detailed and personalized as possible are going to be the best way to push our students to achieve their maximum. And I think that's really the goal.